Since the game has went global, the game of basketball, the NBA, belongs to the international players.
The last 5 MVPs have been won by international players.
I don't want to say that they're dominating, but they have the confidence.
The best players are not born in the United States.
That's it, guys. The international players have taken over the NBA. At least that has been the narrative for a while now, but how international is the NBA exactly? Let's look at which teams have the most foreigners, what countries are most and least represented, and most importantly, who is better right now, the internationals or the Americans? First things first, 125 international players started the 2023-24 NBA season, which broke the record for the second year in a row, and spoiler alert, this record is being broken almost every year. Let's quickly go through history. The league has seen a steady increase of foreign-born players over the last few decades. If we look back to the 1991-92 season, aka the season before basketball became much more popular worldwide, due to the formation of USA's Dream Team, the league had a total of 23 players that were born outside of the US. Keep in mind that back then there were fewer teams too, 27 to be exact, but still the percentage of foreigners was roughly 7%. Fast forward to the early 2000s when that number doubled, then 2014 when for the first time in league's history there were over 100 internationals, and now in 2023 there are more than 5 times the amount of foreigners of what there were in 1992. It's the second consecutive season when the opening night rosters feature at least 120 international players, and the 10th straight season to have at least 100. And of course, all 30 NBA teams feature at least one international player, but which team has the most? Historically, it has almost always been a race between Raptors, Mavericks, and Spurs, with Toronto having record-breaking 10 players from 9 different countries in the 21-22 season. I mean, it's no surprise knowing that first of all, Raptors are the only non-American team in the league, they also have a Nigerian GM, and as of 23-24 season, a Serbian head coach. But this year it isn't Toronto, and instead the Dallas Mavericks and the Oklahoma City Thunder share a league high with 8 international players each. And then it's the Toronto Raptors together with the San Antonio Spurs with 7. It seems to me that it's the hot and sunny Texas or the cold and snowy Canada for these international ballers, or the Southwest, or actually the rest of the US. That's the whole point of this video, they are everywhere now. But surely there must be a team that for some reason has the least amount of foreigners. Well, that would be the Brooklyn Nets, who at the moment have only 1 in Ben Simmons. But even that is questionable, as I would argue Ben isn't even Australian anymore, especially when you listen to how he went from speaking like this.
That's great, because we don't really get that much publicity in Australia. I guess our basketball is just building up now.
To this.
Yeah, everybody kind of gives me the look, but we have an Australian coach, kind of, Brett Brown is also, so he gets it.
Okay, I'm obviously kidding. Having an American accent doesn't mean he's not Australian. I mean, he still represents his country by playing for his national team and stuff. Okay, I'll stop. Speaking of representing a country, let's now see which countries are best represented and which ones have only a single player doing all the work and carrying their flag. Before we do that though, make sure that you are subscribed to our channel, because as soon as we hit that 150,000 subscriber mark, I will personally package and send out this Giannis jersey to 1 lucky subscriber, so do not miss out. Now, it's no shocker that Canada is sitting on top of the international throne, since now they actually have had the most players for the 10th consecutive season. But there was a thing that surprised me, and that was the actual number of Canadian players. In the 2023-24 season, there are a total of 26 Canadians playing in the NBA. In other words, you could assemble 2 teams completely out of NBA players to represent them in the 2024 Paris Olympics. And that is what's surprising to me, because in the 2023 FIBA World Cup, Canada had just 7 NBA players and still managed to finish higher than Team USA. Good news is they'll only need to assemble 1 team, and I cannot wait to see if they manage to have a full NBA squad and whether that team can be competitive against the incoming USA squad that everyone is nicknaming the Avengers. Next up is one of the countries that will be in Paris for sure, and that's the host of the Olympics, France. Although they couldn't get Joel Embiid to play for them, they still have the second highest number of NBA players with 14. My colleague Augustus just did a video on the 2024 NBA prospects, and guess what? More Frenchmen are coming. Below France, with 9 total players, is Australia. Yes, I did include Ben and even had to include Kyrie technically. Followed by 7 Serbians, who most likely are all named Nikola, and Germany, who have 6 of their countrymen competing to become the world champions of the NBA?
World champion of what?
So here's the full graph showing every single country and how many players each of them have. As you can see, there are 16 countries that have 1 player, so I'm not going to list them all, but in total, there are 40 different nations represented. But still, some of you might say that it's not fair to just compare countries without also looking at the continents. 6 of 7 continents, except Antarctica for obvious reasons, have players in the league, with Asia and South America having the least, then it's Australia with the same 9, then Africa with 15, North America with 32, and Europe with literally more than half of the international players in the NBA with 64. Of course, being a Euro-centric basketball channel, I had to make Europe number 1 somewhere. But to be honest, that was probably unnecessary, as the achievements of these Europeans speak for themselves. 4 of them were in the All-NBA team last year, and 2 of them won the MVP from 2019 through 2022. So here we approach the most intriguing question of this whole video. Are the Americans still running the NBA, or is it now dominated by the internationals? I thought long and hard about how to approach this question of who's better, and eventually decided to go with the top 100 players list released by ESPN every year. Since I'm talking about the current season, I'll take the most recent list published in October 2023. Sure, that list is quite subjective, but so is the answer to this question, so I see no problem with that. Starting with the top 10, the first 4 spots are occupied as follows: Giannis Antetokounmpo from Greece, Nikola Jokic from Serbia, Joel Embiid from Cameroon, and Luka Doncic from Slovenia. Do we just end the video here? Okay, in all seriousness, the top 4 is followed by 3 Americans, then SGA from Canada, and 2 more Americans. Just looking at this, I think it's safe to say that the top tier talent right now is clearly international, so 1-0 to them. When it comes to the rest of the best though, we see the other side of this debate. Within the remaining 90 players in the ESPN's top 100, there are 12 internationals and 78 Americans. And I believe this part is largely ignored when looking at the main narrative surrounding this discussion. Yes, the international players now make up more than 25% of the NBA, and yes, some of these generational talents have been dominating the league, but hey, let's not ignore the fact that most NBA teams' starting 5s still consists of 3, 4, or even all 5 Americans. Sure, there are outliers like the Mavs or Raptors who have 3, but the majority of the league is still American players. Now, another thing, I think the most important part in this whole discussion isn't the situation right now, but rather what we can expect in the future. Looking one more time at that top 10, all the Americans except for Jason Tatum are over 30 years old. Also, there are more and more international prospects coming up, and it seems like the National Basketball Association might need to consider renaming themselves to the International Basketball Association. If you want to see an in-depth analysis of what's wrong with the American youth basketball system, click this video here. And if you want to know who are the next international prospects to take over the NBA, click here.